My sister mocked me for being adopted, so I made our parents wish they'd picked me twice. Growing up, my sister Brooke never let me forget I was adopted. While our parents showered us both with love, she'd whisper things like, "They only got you because the agency had a 2-for-1 sale, or at least I know where I came from." I tried not to let it bother me, but every comment chipped away at my confidence. I was 8 when my parents chose me. They already had Brooke, who was 6 at the time, but they wanted another child. After seeing me at the agency, they said it felt like I was meant to be part of our family. But Brooke never accepted me. She'd hide my homework, blame me for things she broke, and tell other kids at school I was secondhand goods. Despite her constant bullying, I worked hard in school while Brooke partied and barely maintained to C average. I was taking advanced classes and studying late into the night. Our parents noticed the difference but didn't want to compare us. They'd praise both of us equally, even when Brooke clearly didn't deserve it. Everything changed during our senior year. Brooke was failing 3 classes and risked not graduating. Instead of studying, she spent her time making TikToks about how adopted kids were damaged goods and posting Instagram stories mocking my generic brand DNA. One day, I overheard her on the phone with her friend. My parents only adopted her because they felt sorry for her. But watch when college applications come around, they'll realize blood is thicker than water. All their money is going to their real daughter's education. That was the last straw. I had already been accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, but I hadn't told anyone yet. I decided to let Brooke dig her own grave. Every time she skipped class to hang out with her boyfriend, I kept quiet. When she forged our mom's signature on her failed math test, I looked the other way. I watched as she dug herself deeper and deeper. The day college decisions were released, our parents gathered. We were all in the living room, sitting with our eyes glued to our laptops. My father, with his hand resting on his chin, watched in silence. My mother, anxious, paced back and forth with her already cold cup of tea in her hands. Brooke seemed too calm, which, coming from her, was almost always a sign that something was about to explode. "Come on, Brooke. Open that email already," my mother said, trying to smile. Brooke huffed as if this was all a waste of time. "Ugh, relax. I know I got in." I didn't even need to look to know she still believed her own lie. She had sent applications to 7 colleges, even with grades that barely met the minimum. For weeks, she spent more time setting up her Instagram aesthetic for the decisions than actually filling out the forms. Delusion was a thick layer in my sister's life. She clicked. The silence lasted a second, the kind of second that seems to stretch until it becomes a weight in the air. Then she read, frowned, scrolled down the page, read again. "This is a mistake," she murmured, pulling the laptop closer to her face. "Honey?" my father asked, his voice heavy with concern. "Rejected." She spat the word like it was poison. "They said my application doesn't meet the academic requirements. This is wrong. I had recommendation letters." My stomach churned, but I held back the smile that threatened to escape. It was cruel to rejoice in someone's downfall, I know. But there was something cathartic about watching her arrogance crumble, layer by layer. As if for the first time, reality was returning everything she had spread along the way. One by one, Brooke opened the other emails. All the responses were variations of the same polite sentence. "Unfortunately, your candidacy was not selected in this cycle." She turned white as paper. For the first time in a long time, Brooke was speechless. My father cleared his throat. "Sweetheart, maybe we can look at other options. Community colleges, technical courses." "No," she interrupted him, slamming the laptop shut. "This doesn't make sense. I deserve to get in." That's when I opened my email. Without much ceremony, I left the laptop screen clearly visible on the table. The word congratulations was emblazoned at the top of Princeton's digital letter. My mother came closer, read slowly, then turned her face to me with teary eyes. You already knew?" I nodded. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I knew today would come," I replied. "And I wanted it to speak for itself." Brooke gave a dry laugh. "Oh, of course. The prodigy orphan. How nice. You think this changes anything?" "I don't think so," I replied, staring at her. "But you will." She got up from the chair so fast she almost knocked it over. "Are you really going to spend money on her? On someone who isn't even a real daughter?" The slap came from a place no one expected. It wasn't directed at me. It came from our mother. Not forceful, not violent, but direct. A dry, small snap that lingered in the room like a ghost. "Never speak like that again," she said, her voice firm. "You can be angry, frustrated, sad, but that doesn't give you the right to be cruel." Brooke stood motionless. Tears accumulated, but she held them back with stubborn pride. You chose her. You always chose her. You only had me because it was easy. She was bought. My mother sighed, but didn't respond. My father tried to touch Brooke's shoulder, but she dodged as if he were fire. She left the room and ran upstairs. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house like a mute scream. During dinner, she didn't show up. Not the next morning either. Not at lunch. Her food remained untouched. Her room locked. Her Instagram silent for the first time in years. But the real shock came 2 days later. An email from the school principal arrived for my parents. Brooke had been reported for plagiarism in 2 assignments. One of the teachers had proof, screenshots, identical texts. The school would initiate a disciplinary process. And if proven, she could be prevented from graduating. My father spent hours in silence, sitting on the porch with his phone in his hand. My mother cried quietly in the bathroom. I just went to my room and gently closed the door. For the first time, I felt no pity. Not anymore. Brooke created the world she lived in. I just let it collapse. And now, she was in there, alone, with the walls crumbling over her own lie. But I knew. She wasn't going to accept falling quietly. She was like a wounded animal. And wounded animals bite. It took 3 days. On the morning of the 4th, I found Brooke sitting at the kitchen table as if nothing had happened. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes covered by a pair of sunglasses even though she was inside the house. She stirred her cereal with the spoon without any real intention of eating. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Did you enjoy the show? Have you told the school too? Or do you want me to go on a silver platter?" I didn't even have to say anything, I replied, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "You were great at digging your own grave." She smiled, but it wasn't a human smile. It was the kind of laugh shown in alleys and broken mirrors. "You think you won, don't you? It's not a competition." "Of course it is. It always was. You just won because nobody expects anything from someone who came from trash." I didn't respond. Not because the words didn't hurt, but because some part of me, a new part, that had hardened, knew she wanted the response. She wanted the conflict. She wanted something that would bleed. But what really hurt was seeing my mother standing in the hallway, listening to everything. The spoon fell from Brooke's hands when she noticed. "If that's how you think about your sister, maybe you need to rethink more than just your grades," my mother said before turning and leaving. Brooke never tolerated being ignored. And that was the first slap of ice. The school's punishment came quickly. Indefinite suspension, formal investigation, nothing guaranteed regarding graduation. She cried in her room on the first day. Not from regret, but from rage, from humiliation. I heard the muffled sobs, objects being thrown against the walls, then silence. The following week, I discovered she had accessed my email. I found the suspicious login warning on my phone. Someone had tried to log in with my password in the middle of the night. I confronted her immediately. "Do you think I'm an idiot?" she said. "You left the laptop unlocked. You went through my things. You meddled in my life. I'm just returning the favor." There was a moment of pause between us, one of those seconds of mutual recognition, when 2 people finally admit who they are to each other. There, in that invisible tension, there was an undeclared war. And war, I realized, requires preparation. That's when I started keeping evidence, screenshots, copies of conversations. I recorded all the small sabotages, the whispers, the deleted emails, everything. Not with the intention of using it, not yet, but as a shield. I knew she wasn't going to stop, and I couldn't allow myself to fall into her game without weapons. Brooke, on the other hand, became more subtle, and that's what makes certain people dangerous, when fury turns into strategy. She began whispering to our parents about how I had changed a lot lately, how I seemed distant, how maybe I was overwhelmed. At first glance, it seemed like concern, but I knew the tone. It was poison in homeopathic drops. My mother started asking me more often if I was okay. My father suggested I relax with my studies. One Sunday, they both called me to talk about academic pressure. Brooke watched everything from afar, with that half smile, like someone playing dominoes waiting for the right piece to fall. "You've been very closed off," my father said. "We just want to make sure you're happy." "You're hearing this from her, aren't you?" They looked at each other, silent, and then I knew. That night, I left my laptop open on purpose. I opened a fake email with a fake message about a supposed suspension of mine for using cheat sheets in a practice test. A test. Bait. The next morning, my calculus teacher called me for a strange conversation. "We received an anonymous email denouncing you." alleging that you cheated on the last exam. I feigned surprise. I feigned fear. But inside, I was at peace. Because the IP of the anonymous email matched exactly with the account that had tried to access my profile days before. And because I had everything documented. I showed everything to the coordinator, the screenshots, the access history, even the security camera in the hallway, which captured the moment Brooke passed by my room on the night of the incident. The school acted quickly. This time, there was no suspension. It was expulsion. The sound of her scream when she received the notice was something I'll never forget. Not from pleasure, but because it was raw, animal, the last roar of a cornered beast. She tried to blame everyone, the school, the teachers, my parents, even me, but it didn't stick. The mask had fallen, and underneath there was nothing but dust. The next day, when I was leaving for school, I saw the suitcase at the door. She's going to Aunt Anna's house, my mother said. Until we know what to do. She was expelled, Mom. She's still your sister. Is she? She didn't answer. She just hugged me. A strange hug, full of silences. As Aunt Anna's car drove away with Brooke in the back seat, she looked through the window and smiled. Not from anger, not from pain. Not a strange smile, like someone who knew something the others didn't know yet. And at that moment, part of me knew this wasn't over yet. The following week, the house seemed cleaner, lighter. The silence between rooms left space for common sounds. The tick of the clock, the wind hitting the hallway window, the creaking of the backyard gate, to seem almost comforting. My parents walked with more contained steps, as if they felt guilty about a piece they hadn't asked for, but couldn't deny. I continued going to school, packing for Princeton and counting the days to get out of there. But even while studying, reading, or having lunch, I felt a shadow behind my neck. That invisible presence that something was moving outside the field of vision. And then the notes began. The first was left inside my backpack, folded 4 times, unsigned. Simple paper, careful handwriting, too fake to seem natural. You may have won, but nobody likes someone who steps on others to climb up. I showed it to my parents, but they pretended it was just resentful teenager stuff. It must be envy, my mother said, trying to smile. You're going to Princeton. That bothers people. But it was more than that. I knew it. In the second note, left in my school locker, it was written, "Everyone has secrets, including you. I just need one to bring everything down." And that's when I began to suspect. Brooke had left a part of herself here. As if even from afar, she could pull invisible strings and move the pieces on the board. There were people at school who still defended her. A small group, but loud. An army of people who saw her as a victim. The girl expelled by the elitist school. The renegade sister. Among them was Ryan, her ex-boyfriend. Or maybe he wasn't an ex yet. Because on Tuesday of the following week, I saw him leaning against the school wall waiting for someone. When he saw me, he smiled. "Hey, can I walk you home?" I refused. He insisted. "She just wants to talk, you know. She's sorry. I think you guys should try." "You think?" I asked. "Or did she tell you to think that?" He shrugged. "You won, okay? Everyone knows that, but I don't know. She's not doing well." I kept walking, without saying anything more. But that same day, my room was invaded. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just disturbed. The closet was ransacked, clothes folded differently. My Princeton Notes notebook was on the bed, open to a page where I had written, months ago, that I didn't know if I could handle the pressure. That sometimes I felt alone, displaced, as if I were acting a role that wasn't mine. On the page, there was now a new note. "It's going to be beautiful when everyone discovers that the perfect girl is falling apart inside." There, alone in my room with the paper between my fingers, I realized Brooke wasn't just stalking me. She was building a narrative, a campaign, trying to turn me into her. The next day, I told my parents that someone had entered my room. "Did you lock the door?" My father asked, more concerned with the details than the fact. "Do you really think I'm making this up?" My mother tried to hug me. I pulled away. "She's still here, even from far away," I said. "And you keep pretending it's just a phase. It's not. She's dangerous." They didn't respond. That night, I locked the door with a key. I hid my notes, changed the passwords on all my devices, and left my phone recording in silent mode, pointed at the door. Nothing happened that night. But the next day, the video showed something strange. At 2:43 a.m., the hallway light turned on, and my room's doorknob turned twice, unsuccessfully. Then, silence. The light went out. Goosebumps, heart beating in my stomach. I showed the video to the principal. I showed it to my parents. Everyone fell silent. "Do you think it was her?" my mother asked. I just replied, "If it wasn't her, then someone even worse is still loose around here." It was only on Saturday that I received the call from Aunt Anna. "She's not here anymore," she said, straight to the point. She left last night, said she was going for a walk, left her phone, took money, and didn't come back." My father dropped the phone on the table. My mother sat on the floor, without saying a word. Me? I just closed my eyes, because I knew exactly what that meant. Brooke was on the loose, and she had nothing left to lose. In the first 24 hours, my parents did what any adult would expect of themselves. They called friends, the police, hospitals. They filed a missing person report. They said words like worried and anxious, but avoided any mention of what they really felt: fear. Not for what might have happened to Brooke, but for what Brooke might be doing. My father installed new locks on the windows. My mother began checking the front door every hour like an anxious ritual. I looked over my shoulder all the time, even inside the house, as if at any moment she could emerge from inside the wall like a living crack. At school, the tension was palpable. Some knew, others suspected. Some began to look at me as if I had provoked this. Ryan was among them. He stared at me in the hallways with that air of someone who thought he knew something important. I pretended not to notice, but I knew he was with her. Emotionally, at least. Maybe more. On Tuesday, I found my locker vandalized. Those who climb by, stepping on others, fall bleeding. They notified the administration. They cleaned it. They gave a generic warning to the entire class. Nobody took responsibility. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. But that night, my father slept with a kitchen knife beside his bed, and my mother put a chair blocking their bedroom door. Brooke was becoming a presence. Not just physical. It was as if she had infected the environment, a fever spreading in the looks of classmates, in the fear of teachers, in the complicit silence of the neighborhood. Because what nobody wanted to say out loud, but everyone knew, was this: Brooke was capable of anything. And then she appeared. Not at home, but at the graduation speech. At my graduation. There was a week left. I was invited to give the main speech as the class standout. The student who got into Princeton, who overcame so many obstacles, as the principal said, smiling without knowing half of it. The night before, I received an email from the school confirming the speech. Attached, the final text revised by the coordination, but the file wasn't mine. Instead of the text I wrote, there was something completely different. A manifesto. It began like a public letter. For Brooke. It narrated the entire truth about me. A manipulative girl who ruined her own sister out of envy, who forged evidence, who always wanted to take her place, who lied to everyone. The last sentence was a punch. Maybe it's true that blood doesn't make family, but sometimes blood is what drips when the mask falls. I dropped my phone. I ran to my laptop. The original file had been deleted, replaced. Every copy, every version. Backup? Inaccessible. Emails? Gone. How she managed it, I didn't know. But the mark was clear. Brooke. The next day, I took everything to the administration. The school's IT confirmed the text sent came from my email, but the access had been made by someone with my login from an unknown IP. Ryan worked part-time in the library. He had access to the computers. The school asked me to redo the speech. They promised to review it personally. Just a scare, they said. But they knew. She was closer than ever. On ceremony day, my mother helped me put on my gown. Her hands trembled, but her smile was firm. You made it this far. Nobody can take that away. In the car, my father said nothing. Deep down, he was afraid the ceremony would end with more than diplomas. At school, the gates were more heavily guarded. But surveillance doesn't stop ghosts. The packed auditorium, white chairs, artificial flowers, the sweet and suffocating smell of cheap perfume. The speeches went by. Speeches from students, coordinators, parents. When my name was called, I walked to the stage feeling the world weigh on my shoulders, each step like a step toward judgment. I took the microphone, breathed, looked at the audience. She was there, in the back row. Dark shirt, hair tied back, dark glasses, a cap pulled too low. But I would have recognized her even in the dark. My blood froze, but I continued. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice clear despite my racing heart. We are here today to celebrate, to remember that we made it this far, and that alone is an achievement. But we are also here to acknowledge that the path to this stage is not always fair, not always kind. I continued, improvising where the text had been destroyed. I spoke about what it's like to grow up with someone trying to erase you. about what it's like to fight for a place in a house that had already been built for another. I spoke of pain and silent courage. No names, no revenge, but every word was a subtle blade. Brooke looked at me like a sphinx, without blinking, without smiling, like someone waiting for a signal. I finished the speech to applause, but eyes were turned to the back row. She was no longer there. I left the stage with my heart in my throat. I went straight to the backstage room, accompanied by 2 security guards, at the administration's request. Inside, I found a brown envelope with my name. Inside, a photo. It was me as a child, sleeping in my bed, and a figure in the corner, poorly lit, with a shadow over her face. But I recognized the scarf around her neck. Brooke. On the back of the photo, there was a sentence written in red pen. "The house isn't yours. It never was. And I still have the key." I stared at that sentence for so long that the words began to blur. The weight of the paper in my hands was ridiculously light, but it seemed to press against my chest, as if this were more than a note, as if it were a warning, an oath, or a sentence. I didn't tell my parents that night. I knew what would come. More surveillance, more locks, more empty promises of everything will be fine. But none of that stopped Brooke. The problem was that they still thought she was a person in crisis. I had already understood. She was an expanding threat. The next day, I checked all the locks in the house. All were intact. No sign of break-in, no broken windows. The guest room, where she had slept for years, still contained some remnants. Books she never read, notebooks full of blank pages, photos of us that now seemed like jokes. But there, inside one of the closets, I found something that shouldn't have been there. A dark wooden box, locked with a simple padlock. It was dusty, as if it had been forgotten, but I knew. Brooke didn't leave anything to chance. I broke the padlock with a hairpin, and inside I found a pile of paper clippings, old notes, printed messages, all mine. Messages I wrote, gifts I gave, even pieces of school assignments with teachers' comments. It was as if she had made a file of me, an obsession, but the worst was the diary. It wasn't hers. It was mine, my old diary, which had disappeared years ago. When I was 12, I thought I had thrown it away by accident, but there it was, with pages marked by strange fingers, circled sentences, highlighted passages, small annotations in the margins, like an editor reviewing someone else's story. She had been studying me for years. On the last page, in recent ink, she wrote, "The world loves you now, but the world loves victims. Let's see what happens when you become the villain." I closed the diary. I sat on the floor of the room and breathed. This was it. She wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to run away. She was going to invert me. And worse, I was alone. I went back to my room and locked the door. I picked up my phone and called the only person who could be in contact with her, Ryan. He answered on the third call. Low voice, sleepy, or pretending to be. "Are you with her?" I asked without beating around the bush. Silence. "I know you are. Just tell me one thing. Is she okay?" More silence, then a whisper. "She's calm, but not like before. Like she's decided. You know? Decided what? She won't tell me, but she's collecting things. Photos, videos, recordings, of you, of the school, of your mother, everything. Why? She wants to tell her version, make the world listen, but I don't think she wants justice. I think she wants a scene." I swallowed hard. "Tell me where she is." "I can't, but be careful tomorrow." She said it would be tomorrow. He hung up. The next day, my mother woke me up before the alarm. Pale face, phone trembling in her hands. She just said, "Open the school group, now." I opened it. Brooke had posted a video. The title, "The Truth About My Perfect Sister." The thumbnail was a montage of photos of us, me smiling on the graduation stage, her crying on the school sidewalk, our father in the background with a disappointed face. Drama in layers. I clicked. The screen darkened. Her voice began, low, trained, like a dark documentary. She spoke about me, but not as a sister, as a character, as a villain. She told our stories switching the roles. She said I sabotaged her since childhood, that I was the one who spread rumors, that I forged evidence, that I manipulated our parents, that I used my status as poor adopted orphan as a shield to hide a cruel and ambitious mind. The video had photos, edited scenes, excerpts out of context. Even the graduation speech was included, with cuts that distorted my words. When it ended, I was shaking, and the comments were already starting to pop up. "Damn, I never thought she was like that." She really does seem calculating in that speech. Adopted and fake on top of it. Wow. My father entered the room with a red face. We're going to delete this. Sue, call the police. My mother just sat down. She cried like someone who had lost something that was still there. But not me. I was quiet. Because at that moment, I realized that Brooke had succeeded. She didn't want justice. She didn't want to come back. She wanted to leave me here, in her place. And deep down, I knew. She had won something. Had won. Maybe not the war, but the stage. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. School, suspended pending investigation, internet, hell. People looked at me on the street as if something was wrong, but they didn't know what. A silent and constant judgment. At night, I received a message from an unknown number. Now, we really are sisters. You feel what I felt. You sleep in fear. You wake up trying to remember who you are. Welcome to my world. With love, Brooke. And no matter how much I wanted to hate her, no matter how much I wanted to destroy her, the truth was simple. She no longer needed to be here to haunt me. She had already entered, through the front door, with the key that, after all, had always been hers.